Good morning and welcome to Morning Moments. Thank you for joining us today. Today I have an author. Her book is called uh, Washed New, and I'm excited to hear a little bit about it. It is my privilege to bring to Moments the author Sandra Boyd. Welcome to Morning Moments, Sandra.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for inviting me to Morning Moments. And I got a little emotional right before this, so thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Let me ask you the question, get you started. What do you do and why do you do it?
I wrote a book. I wrote a book. It just came out. I did a couple of edits to it, but my journey goes a little bit back, because I grew up not knowing the Lord, and I grew up, being a Catholic, but being a wild Catholic, very broken. My dad had left us when I was 7 years old, and all I grew up with was with a lot of hate and a lot of bitterness. So I can relate to bitterness quite often. So I grew up, very broken, and just, my mother didn't know how to explain. Well, she hated my dad and she fueled that into us. So I hated my dad, as a reason for it, because I was like, no child support. I mean, just all these things. So I grew up very negative and very broken because for 23 years of my life, I never saw my dad. Never. I mean, I still have the memory of seeing him, in my next door neighbor's house, which was my uncle's, through the fence, and that was it. So I kind of grew up with that feeling of not being worthy. So, anyways, fast forward, and I now it's like, years later, I am, dating and everything, and just I used alcohol to numb my pain until finally I lived in San Antonio, and I had dated this guy, and he was a military guy, and he's like, Sandra, I can't give you what you want because I wanted to, settle down and stuff. And he's like, I can't. And I was like, okay. So for the first time after all that brokenness, I got on my knees. I was in my apartment. I had a little apartment and I was in my pajamas. I remember that. And I got on my knees and I said, God, if you exist, send me a man that loves you more than he loves me, and I will give up the drinking and the partying. And so I remember I was back in the day, I was doing online dating, and I got up and I went to the computer to go delete my profile, and then a little thing comes up, and it was a verbatim. The message said, "I love God above all things," and that is literally the first time I had ever prayed. And because I was angry, I was bitter, I was just broken. And when that message came through, I mean, I had a huge list. I want this, or the man has to be this. And when that message came through, literally that changed my life. I am 3 months later, I am married to this man who, he knew the word. He would speak in tongues. He was the one who introduced me to Christ. And because of him, we got married, real quick because I didn't want to live with anybody unless I was married. And I got, we had married, 2 kids, a house, everything. And I thought I hit the jackpot. And then it turns out that I didn't. I mean, I got saved that way, but I went through a very bad divorce. I went through a very bad marriage with him. He had never drank in his life, and here I was the alcoholic. Everything that, that he wanted, I wasn't it. And he's like, God has a sense of humor because, he wanted an innocent person and I wasn't, I was the partier. So needless to say that it was very turbulent, and finally we ended up 9 years later we ended up getting divorced. But that is how I met the Lord. I met the Lord, through him, and the book, I ended up writing this book. So after our journey of being married and praying and God, saved this marriage and everything, I finally just said, I got on my knees and I was like, God, what is it that you want from me? It's like, show me what you want from me. And that's when this pastor said, hey, I've got a prophetic word for you. God says you're supposed to write a book. And and it's supposed to be about your testimony. And all this time, I work in a very professional industry, and where I was just ashamed. I was ashamed to share my dirt. I was ashamed to share that I come from, brokenness. I was ashamed, because, we live in an area, like we live in a world where everything is about your image. And so when I started writing this book, I said, okay, God, I'll do it, And then a year passed, another year passed, until finally I ended up in the hospital. And when everything, when I ended up in the hospital, everything, because I had said in my heart, God, I'll write the book by this date, God. Well, guess what? It was like the New Year's Eve and everything went haywire. I mean, and like the tires of my car almost came out. The fridge stopped working, the dishwasher. I mean, everything started going crazy. And I knew that at that moment, like I knew, because it came to me and I said, oh my God, I've been in disobedience. So after, and then I got I ended up in the hospital, and I told my kids, hey, I'm going to go to the hospital because my heart is going real fast. It's beating real fast. And, I was having an anxiety attack, I think. And my kids are like, no, mom, you go and we're going to go with you. So we ended up in the hospital, and finally they said, no, you were just having an anxiety attack and so forth. And after I got out of the hospital, I went and I found a publishing company and I said, listen, my manuscript's not even done, but I need to sign a contract, let me pay little by little, so that I can, make so that I can start. And that's when I went to God and I was like, God, now I'm being serious. Now this is for real. I said that I would do it, and just to let you know, this is now I'm being serious, because now I'm paying on a monthly basis so that I can, get my publishing done. And I didn't even have the book ready. So this is me stepping out on faith and going forward. I finally finished the book, years later. And every time that I sat there though, I was reminded that it wasn't the reason I wrote the book is because even throughout my brokenness and everything over the years, God has been restoring me. Even, but I had to surrender. The book is literally about my testimony. It's about faith. It's about every single miracle. People don't think that miracles happen. Well, they happen to me, not just once or twice. I mean, both of my kids are miracle children. I mean, I was told to abort both of them by different doctors for different circumstances. And I have two healthy kids. I mean, just when I thought, I'm a single mom, and just when I thought I couldn't, do it, God always showed up. And so, literally, the book is about giving people hope, also teaching people like what not to do in a marriage, because the marriage was just not the fault of my ex. It was actually, my fault too. That's basically, my story, trying to give people hope. And every failure that I had, it's in there. So I know that it can help people. Um, Now, where I'm at right now, I'm at a very happy place.
Where did the title "Washed New" came from?
The Holy Spirit gave it to me, but because I was just, I was just full of sin, full of dirt. And that's how I perceive myself, like not worthy enough for so long. So this is before COVID. And and then I was like, washed new. I was, telling the Holy Spirit, like, who's gonna know that? And then COVID hits and everything is washed, washed, washed. But yeah, it's like basically like I always think of it like this. If God could change me and, you know, make me into who I am today. He can do that for anybody. If he could restore the relationship with my dad, there are so many broken people out there that he can do that for others. So that's my story, just to encourage somebody because I didn't grow up with the Lord. I mean, I am now. I love him so much that it's just like, my daughter just told me, she was like, Mom, you're so religious. And I was like, no, I said, I'm just, a mom. I said, I'm going to tell you what's right and what's wrong because now I know the word. I didn't know the word before. I didn't know that prayer had, there's power in prayer. I didn't know about, it being important to have that relationship with the Lord. So I'm just at the beginning of my journey. I mean, in my first podcast, the guy said, Sandra, let me tell you this. He's like, I've been so successful, but there's one thing you can't say. He's like, you cannot mention the name Jesus. And I was like, oh. So then as soon as, he put me on, he's like, so tell me about yourself. I said, well, let me tell you about my life and how Jesus saved my life. And so I now understand. It's like, one thing is writing the book and the other thing is the marketing the book. So I just hope that my story just helps somebody. I mean, if there's anything that, it's all about healing. It's all about just knowing that you're not there alone. It's just knowing that, I had, you know, low self-esteem. I had issues with my weight. I could tell you I have a whole list of things. But at the end, guess what? Right now, I'm probably at the happiest place that I've ever been, because now it's like I have the love of God. I mean, I am who I am and I love myself. I can't change my past, but I can definitely help people, that have been in the situation that I'm in. It's like,
You've seen her book. I put the book on the screen here while she was talking. And if you want to know more about her story, please get the book. Find out Amazon, different places where it's going to be at, and you can find it. Please get connected to that. If you need to get connected to her, we can get you connected as well. If you want to know more about how God's worked in her life. If you're also at a point where you're saying, I really don't know that there's any hope for me, I'm going to tell you, you could be washed new. God can take the vilest sinner and wash them white as snow. That's what washed new is all about. And I know when I came to Christ 58 years ago, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about what happened when I bowed before him and gave him my life. Today could be your day when you listen to this and say, I don't know why I listened to this today, but I need that. I need to know more about that. Please reach out to one of us and find out more. Get the book, find out more. As we close today, I also want you to take the time and pray for Sandra. God's got great things for her, and be way beyond she could even hope or dream. But she needs your prayers. She needs your prayers, and you need to practice, folks. So pray that God would richly bless her in all that she's done and all that she's going to do. Sandra, thank you for so much for being on Morning Moments today.
thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.
Please pass this interview on to others that you feel that needs to hear this. And if you would, keep coming back for some more Morning Moments.